We're going to talk about Learning Objective 1.3D. I'm going to show you how to interpret the 5-number summary, make a box plot, or modified box plot. So the 5-number summary basically consists of the smallest observation that we have out there, which of course is just the minimum. It's the first quartile. It is also then the median, then it's the third quartile, and then lastly it is the largest observation. So a nice way to summarize it, I like to say, is it's just the min, it's quartile 1, the median, quartile 3, and then it's the maximum. That is called the 5-number summary. So the 5-number summary is handy though because you can actually visually graph the 5-number summary. When you graph that, it's actually called the box plot. So the graphical display of the 5-number summary is the box plot. So how do you actually construct a box plot? If you have all of this data, all you need to do is this. You're going to do a central box is drawn from the first quartile, which is Q1, to the third quartile of Q3. After you have that box, you're then going to draw a line in the box that marks the median. And then you wrap it up by drawing lines that we call whiskers that extend to the largest and the smallest observations. So, a quick thing, a box plot, that would be Q1 to Q3. That might be your median, that could be your max, and that could be your min. A modified box plot then is just like a regular box plot. However, you have to do the outlier test first. And then if you do identify any outliers, what you do is you make them look like dots. So let's say we did the outlier test and we realized that the maximum point actually was an outlier. So what I would do is I'd make a single dot for that. I would then find the next piece of data that was lower than the max, maybe it was right here, and that's now where my whisker would start. So we'd have the same box, but the whisker would just go out to here. So when you look at it, it's a really nice representation of realizing this guy here was an outlier. Let's just quickly review how you might get these components, and we'll do our own example. But here we have, again, the New York travel times of those 20 different people. Remember, we're going to take the data set, put it in increasing order. We're going to find the median, which they found here. Quartile 1 is 15, quartile 3 was 42.5, the maximum value is 85, and the minimum value is 5. Now, they had done the outlier test on this, and they did realize that 85 was an actual outlier. So in this case, what we're going to sketch is the modified box plot. So to sketch it, all you're going to do is we're going to go over to, let's do 15, and then we're going to go 42.5, which should be about right here. Now, do not put this on top of the number line. It needs to be above it. Our median is about right here is the box. 5 is our minimum, which is here, so that's one whisker. 85 was an outlier, so I'm going to keep it there. And the next highest one was 65, so I'm going to go over to 65, and that is where the whisker would go. So this is considered a modified box plot. If we didn't draw it modified, what we would do is actually extend this out. Now, on free response questions, they may ask you to construct a box plot. A lot of the times in the scoring rubrics, they're going to say, realize there was an outlier. So this is something you would want to test for and adjust your box plot to be a modified box plot. Now, there's only one example in your notes I want to go over. So let's talk about where do we get the data for the 5-number summary, how can we use the calculator to draw the box plot, and how can we use it to draw the modified box plot. You may still have this data in your calculator. Remember, it was the grams of fat per all these chicken sandwiches that we have here, and there's 14 chicken sandwiches. So we're going to go to Stat Edit and put our data in List 1, and then Stat Calc, a one-variable statistic, and we're going to get this information right here. So we can get from this very easily the 5-number summary. So from this screen here, we can see all of the information. Our min is 9, our quartile 1 is 10, median is 16, quartile 3 is 17, and the maximum is 28. So we could draw that by hand if we wanted to. We could also do the outlier test by hand if we wanted to, but we actually don't have to. Let me show you how to draw the box plot in the calculator and how the modified box plot can be drawn, which actually does the outlier test for us. Now, let's use the calculator to draw the box plots, and we're going to bring back the beef data of the sandwiches. So in my list 1, it looks like I have the chicken sandwiches, and in list 2 is the beef. Now I can sketch 2 box plots at a time. Remember when we graph like histograms, we were using the stat plot. The box plots are in there too. So we're going to use the stat plot in there and the actual zoom to statistics. So do second y equals. And when you do that, you're going to come to this screen. Just hit enter. Remember, the most common mistake is not to turn it on, so click on. And there's 2 box plots here. The 5th graph here, that is the regular box plot, and the 4th one here is the modified box plot. Let's just do the regular box plot first, and I'm going to do list 1, frequency is 1, and I'm going to call this one blue. I then am going to go back and do second stat plot, or y equals, and I'm going to go to plot 2. So scroll down to plot 2, hit enter, turn it on. Again, let's choose the 5th graph, the regular box plot. And now I'm going to change it to list 2 though. Frequency is 1 and I have a different color. Now to graph it, you're just going to hit zoom. When you hit the zoom button, number 9 is zoom statistics. And when you do, it's going to be right here. This trace button is incredibly handy, so if you hit trace, what it will do is it'll bounce between the 5-number summary elements on here, so you don't even have to run a 1-variable stats. So again, try trace and you can go and see the elements because it'll list it down here. If we look at this, we're going to see the chicken sandwiches by far have less fat and the hamburgers have more. Now this graph here is the modified box plot, which I really like. So what I'm going to do is go back into these stat plots, both the first one and the second one, and I'm going to select the 4th graph this time, which will actually do the outlier test. And then just hit zoom statistics one more time, so zoom number 9. When you do that, it's going to do the outlier test in the background and plot any outliers. We already knew that that one chicken sandwich was an outlier, and we see it right there. So it's awesome because you don't have to do the 1.5 IQR outlier test unless you are asked to show your actual work. This will do it for you. Now the last part of this is they want you to compare these distributions. You probably are going to see a question like this somewhere on either a class test or an actual free response test. The key thing you want to get from this are just find the big elements. One thing that really points out to me is if I look right here, remember that is the 25th percentile, and this group here is where 25% of the data is sitting. So it looks like to me the lower 25% of the beef sandwiches for their fat count, if I compare that to the chicken sandwiches, from here to here on the chicken sandwiches, that's 75% of the graph. So I think that's an element to really point out. And you could say this a variety of ways. One thing you could say is the bottom 75% of the chicken sandwiches have the same range of fat content as the lower 25% of the beef sandwiches. Another interesting thing that pops out to me is if I look here is the maximum part on the chicken. It's almost like we have this group is the top 25% of the chicken sandwiches. And it looks like, they're still only within almost the median of the beef sandwiches. So maybe you point out and you could say, the top 25% of the fat content of the chicken sandwiches just barely exceeds the median value of the beef sandwiches. So that is interesting. Maybe a last few other points you could say, the minimum value is the same on both. The maximum value we know on the chicken sandwich was here, which is about the same as the median value of the beef sandwich. There are a lot of different features between these 2 box plots that you could talk about. The key here is just to pick the maybe top 1 or 2 things and point those out to the AP board.